Awesome. Very good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today in this session with uLaw. My name is Praveen Srinivasan. I've been with uLaw for just under 14 years, and thank you, Olga, for the introduction and setting some expectations. What I'm hoping to do within the next 1 hour is walk you through pretty much kind of who uLaw is, and from a practice management standpoint, talk about features, functionalities, the business value that you as a legal practitioner should expect out of utilizing a product such as uLaw. Okay, so for any information that you want to know more about us as a company, we're a Canadian company based out of Ottawa, and our website is uLaw.io or ulawpractice.com, and you could go and learn more about the product, the solutions, learn more from fellow practitioners as to what they have to say, and we're of course very excited to be partnering with many Canadian institutions that teach legal programs, software programs, and thank you, George Brown, for this opportunity. I am going to mute the phone line.
What?
Actually, can I ask you
Sorry, go ahead. What was the question, please?
No. I wanted to make sure that you muted everybody. You were doing that exactly, so we don't have interference or feedback. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm just going to mute everyone, but you could always use the chat window to ask any questions, or if you want me to specifically focus on any item, okay? Awesome. Perfect. So I'm going to jump into a presentation that we make, which is a CPD session for an hour called Everything Practice Management. This is something that we deliver at least 2 to 3 times a year, and it's accredited for 1 hour of professionalism CPD credits. And right away, I want to focus on the key aspects of this presentation and switch between this and maybe a live demo of how we accomplish some of these tasks. Okay, so we specifically want to cater to what we think are the top obligations that you as a legal professional carry as part of being within this profession and what's expected out of you. Of course, I'm not going to talk about time management, personal management. I'm going to strictly focus on the practice management component of it, okay? But if you really look at it, one of the first obligations that you have and one of the responsibilities that you as a legal practitioner carry is the ability now, once you've started your business, of course, and you've created your business accounts, your bank accounts, or your credit union accounts, and when you're ready to start business, one of the first things you should anticipate is expecting new customers. And that process is called what's a client intake process, okay? So we're calling it client, but it could be customer. It's one of the fundamental first steps that you would take as a practitioner to take information from a new client about their name, first name, last name, whatever specific pertinent information you want to capture that's meaningful to you, some contact information, an address if there is one, right? And you now need the opportunity to store that information for many different purposes, such as conflict search, such as knowing who you're catering to, such as creating a matter, and so on and so forth, okay? So let's talk through the client intake service and communication. And the service and communication is really where you establish the expectation around once you have that client doing your due diligence to accredit it if this is a right customer or client to move forward with, through a engagement or a retainer letter, decide how you want to engage this customer, set expectations, roles, responsibilities. That's where we come in to help you with some templates that help you get started right away with some of these documents. So let me first focus on those components of the practice management system. Now what you see here in front of you is a web-based system, so it's online, so there's no program to download into your local computer, which really means that you can access your information in a very secure, convenient manner from anywhere. Of course, this is table stakes today, but we did pioneer this 14 years back when a lot of the systems were PC-based, okay? we are 256-bit encrypted, like bank-grade security, so you can certainly, I think it's important that you understand the components of the security aspect to it, so you can always click on this little lock icon. I'm walking you through a practice management test account, or a playground account as we call it. So the data in here is not real, it's just some of the things that our customers use to get themselves familiar with, and something we use day in and day out for all our demonstration purposes. But the product remains to be the same. And what you would do if you have access to uLaw is fundamentally personalize the whole experience using your settings. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of the information that you capture, the way you capture it, important information such as taxes and rates. So right from your tax number, if you have one, to your default fee rate, which becomes important for your file matter docketing purposes, a HST, depending on your jurisdiction. So uLaw does cater to practitioners across the country here in Canada. So we pretty much have all of the provinces and their tax codes, and you can see they change as your business requirements change, right? You can also override this. This is just a default, but you can always override this. We have customers who are based out of Ontario, sometimes may work in other provinces for a short period of time. Okay. We also have all of your, in your settings, some of the basic information, such as your travel rates and all of the disbursement costs that you may have towards handling a file. And the reason I bring this up is because once I start a file, start docketing, dispersing, you will start to see some standard information show up, and this is where they come from. Okay. Now, from a matter standpoint, you have quite a few options, and we'll get to it in a minute, but I'll first focus your attention on our dashboard. From an overall practice management standpoint, right, one of the important things that we've learned over these 14 years is, as cliche as it sounds, time is very important for you as a legal practitioner, especially because you're multitasking, and you're always going to be working on top of your mind information, whether that's doing conflict checks or whether it's understanding if there are any matters for which you haven't yet raised an invoice, whether it's a recent client that you've just had an intake but you haven't moved forward. So right under our settings, you have the opportunity to flexibly change the dashboard components. These are simple reminders that allow you to take an action. For example, if you look at, if I can draw your attention to this invoice pending matter, what this widget or square is talking about is a bunch of customers for whom you've done the work, and this happens day in and day out, right? For whom you worked, you've put in the dockets, but you've not yet moved to the next stage, which is invoicing the customer, which is important for you to make your money. So the dashboard gives you the ability to invoice this customer right away, right from here, or you can do a quick preview if you think it's prudent to invoice this customer at this time or not. So right from the dashboard, you're getting into a preview mode for a specific customer, and you can right away see this is a preview or a pre-bill. It tells you there's about $1,300 in an amount due, which comes from a few dockets. There's no disbursements in this billing period. There's some retainers in the past, so there's still about $800 left in trust. And with everything else, with dockets and the trust amount, the amount due is $1,300. You can digitally sign this, and you can even attach a link once you've integrated with any of the payment gateways that we partner with. You can even request the customer to pay for this at their own leisure, just like doing Amazon shopping. Okay, so that's really the flow. So right from the dashboard, once you're familiar with the system, you'd start to recognize how important the dashboard becomes. If you want to go into the matter itself, you can just say, Patricia, this is Stefan, and we take you right into the matter if you want to do a deeper dive into what this matter is. But from a client intake standpoint, which is, as I mentioned, very important, we have a few options to provide you, a few based on innovations that came out through the COVID time. But it's as simple as clicking Add New Contact and saying Add to Clients. So in uLaw, we capture contact information, and we believe that contacts can be of various different types, clients being one of the top types of contacts. Now, you as a legal business may come across various different other types of contacts, right? For example, if you're dealing with a small claims matter, and if, let's say, you're representing the plaintiff or plaintiffs, then the opposing party would actually be a contact that you would save. So in this case, the defendant, for example, may be contact information that you save. Now, the defendant would have their own legal representation sometimes, right? If they do have one, and let's say another legal practitioner, you can save that information as a contact of type representative of opponent. So there's many different what we call in legal lingo as additional parties that are critical for two purposes. One, there are certain specific court forms in the jurisdictions that you are in, and uLaw automates court forms in the province of Ontario. So we're able to pre-populate all of that information. The second area where contacts become important is for the conflict search. Okay? But I'm going to show you a simple example of how you can do one way of doing client intake. You have your uLaw open, you're just saying add new contact, and the first option is clients. Now, ghost clients is a nice different category of clients. And really why we have that as a separation is, let's say someone gives you a lot of information about themselves and they really are flirting with the idea of retaining you as legal practitioner, give you some pertinent information that's sensitive, and then just like the word resonates, they disappear. Could be for a period of time or could be for a long time. It's your responsibility now to mark them down as a ghost client because you still have the responsibility of saving that information. But then you can always send them a non-engagement letter that states that, hey, it's been almost 6 months since we spoke and you haven't engaged me, and here is my non-engagement letter, pretty much taking myself out of any obligation to legally represent you. Okay, so that's a responsibility that you carry, and we have templates for that, which I'll show you. But let's focus on the clients. And of course, there's a big conversation around titles these days, but we're making some changes according to that. But let's say this is Miss Lanny Davidson, just some random name. I'll say LD. In certain court forms, they do ask for the also known as name or nickname, right? You can put in a company name if you like. If this is a business that you're working with, you can always say it's a corporation, and you can say this is Rogers Inc. So if you're working with, or if you're working with another law firm, you can put their name in. Okay, but if it's an individual, you leave this unchecked. Put in the first name, last name, any other information that you have. There's a source of contact. It's a very important piece of information that we request you to capture, both from a marketing standpoint for you to recognize where you're getting your leads from, but also that it is a Law Society report that's being asked of you called a source of contact report. So you could say this is from family. You can always use the notes to say referred by Uncle Bob. Okay. Physical address if there's one. Very simple. And uLaw allows you to save multiple addresses. So you could always say add and have multiple addresses. Okay. But only one of them is used as a mailing address. And in uLaw, the mailing address gets used across correspondences, invoices, as well as court form filling. So whatever address you put as a mailing address gets populated as their correspondence address in court forms. You can have a phone number, an email. What other additional information do you have? And you click Save. In uLaw, everything is not an automatic save, so you have to click the button to save it, and it says right here, Saving Contact. Once this disappears, you have control over the system again, because now this is saving. into the database in the cloud. Okay, so now this information is available to you even if you use our app. So we have a Android as well as an iOS app which you could use, and I'm going to see if I can bring that up too. So that's a big component of practice management in today's day and age, right? Simply because you need access to all this information at any given time. And let me show you real quick without taking much of your time. I'll jump to this in a bit of a time. Okay. So you're pleased to use the chat window if you have any questions at all until now about anything that we've done. Like we've just created a client, Lanny Davidson, and that's pretty much it. Okay. All right. Now another way in which you can conveniently ask for information. So let's say this is you manually entering Lanny Davidson's information. Yeah. Another modern way, I would have to say, of how you can go ahead and request client intake information is something called as a client portal that we've recently introduced as a feature. Now, when you click this client portal, it's basically asking you for two pieces of information. It's asking you for your client, end customers, or this potential client's email address. Everyone has an email address today, so you could basically using an email address, and what's called as a client portal secret key. And I'll get to this because this is what you create within our settings. Okay. So I'm going to enter the secret key and generate what's called a portal link. So this is a very personalized custom link that's created for Roger Moore, the legal practitioner, for a client whose email address is this. You can select and copy this link. I'll show you where that password is. So you can go into settings, under contacts, right at the end, you have a client portal secret key that you can set up yourself. Now this is different from the password that you would use to log in into uLaw. So this is one added security so that no one randomly starts to enter information into your system. And the reason I'll tell you is this. So let's say you are now composing an email, okay, to that client. And I'm sure you're aware of templates within both Outlook as well as Gmail, so you can create these little standard templates. You could say, hi, Larry, please find our client intake form, request you to fill out this information, and once we receive information, our law office will be in touch with you. Okay, so you can change this to however you like. Send them that personalized link, and you can see it comes from the Roger Moore Law Firm, and send the email. This is all coming under what we're talking about client intake, service, and communication. The first type of client intake was just a manual, but now in today's day and age where everyone has limited time, this is a feature that we believe would benefit everyone. So once you've sent that email, I'm logged into my account. You could see here, it says, hi Larry, the same information, please click this link. I'm going to go ahead and click that link. So assuming this is Larry, your potential client or your client, they get this form very similar to the add new client form that you had to fill out. Instead, you've got this web form, secure again, and you can now get Larry's information have Larry fill it out himself. And you also marked an important piece of information that you want to capture. In fact, this is information that the Law Society wants you to capture, pertinent information. Okay. And you can see all these are optional. The ones in asterisks are the ones that you're looking for. Let me just fill this out from some previous forms. But now you can personalize this web form now to ask these questions, saying, all right, what's important for you to capture? So what is the additional information that you want to ask the client about this? So you could say, the client might say, I'm looking for representation on a slip and fall matter with my neighbor. It's that time of the year. How did you hear about us? Very important. That's your source of contact. So this could be newspaper, could be friends, and the type of photo ID that you pretty much have to show for, because that's important as part of your conflict search or just ensuring that you've done your due diligence. So you could say, maybe the client says, I got a driver's license. The same email address that was used to correspond, that's critical that they match. Ensuring that this is not a digital robot, this is a human being. And you get the authorization that the client hereby authorizes the firm to communicate via this email address. Okay? And let's say the customer submits this piece of information. So now you've empowered your potential customer or your client to submit information at their own leisure. And this web form is well created that it can also support mobile phones. As soon as that happens, this happens. Your firm gets notified saying, hey, you have a new client. So if you have your Gmail on your phone, of course, this is getting notified right away. Larry has just completed the client intake process. This is the information, right? And also says go into your uLaw application and verify the rest of the information. Now the magic here, or the wonderful thing that I've seen is, as soon as that information is done, you could see into the uLaw system, you have Larry's information automatically populated. You don't even have to enter this into the system. This is readily available. And if any small changes have to be made, you can come in here and make those changes. You can see submitted driver's license, matter info. We found you have friends. Okay? So you can just say friends here. The address, make that the mailing address. Phone number, you can see everything is filled out. So make the relevant updates really instead of adding it. So this is how you could do a client intake either manually or through a web form. We have some additional ways of doing it too, like we have a PDF form. I'm not going to bore you with that. You can import information. You can have your own intake form and all that stuff. But these are the two main ways in which I've seen customers utilize this. Okay. What is the next step? The next step is really to do a conflict check. So you can do a client ID verification. Let's say you've asked him for a driver's license. I clicked on the action button here because that's where a lot of the action happens. You could say, Larry Gregory, I got his driver's license. This is a Law Society form that requires you as the legal person or legal firm to commit or showcase the client ID verification process. And we help pre-populate as much as information as we know. And you can file this document as part of that document generation. The next immediate step as an obligation as part of your client intake service and communication is the conflict check. So you do that right under the contact, Larry, and there's this option, conflict check. You can do a very simple check for just first name, last name, or you can check if you've ever created a matter for someone who sounds like Larry. Let's say I go ahead and do that. When this is running behind the scene, you can go ahead and generate additional documents like envelopes or whatever information you need to create, all under document generation. So you've got labels that you can print out with phone information. Okay, little practice management things that go a long way. So let's say we also show you the different sizes of envelopes here. Okay. So let's say this is a DL. The idea is you print this on the on your printer and gets embossed right on top of it. And you can see you can personalize this. You can have your own legal firm's logo, information, right? All the cool stuff. Now, here is the conflict form or conflict search, the results of a conflict search. And you can see in this particular database, there are a few Larrys. Larry Potter, Larry Gonzalez, Larry the lawyer. And there's a few Gregs because of the last name. There's a Fillmore Gregory. Absolutely, yeah. Templates are a galore in the product. Really help you start off. So there's a Larry versus Steffi. There's also a Gregory versus Adam. So as per Law Society's compliance, we also date stamp this, so you can clearly see this is today, 9th of December. It's important for you to save this document as a way of you showing that you've done your due diligence of doing a conflict search, and it's based on this information that you're moving to the next step, which is creating a matter for this person. Okay? That's moving to the next step, which is determining collateral for fees, retainers, or if you determine, based on this information, that there is a conflict, so maybe you can do some due diligence. So let's take this file name. We have what's called as a quick view. This is it's going to be one of your best friends once you start using the system, because you can search up any information here about a matter. Okay. So let's say you only had LP 436, so maybe this was a closed file. I'm going to say all matters. Yeah, closed it. Let's say Gregory. There you go, LP 4366. So you can click on it, go into the matter, and really see if it makes sense, if there is a conflict or not. So so there is, so the question is there a field to indicate their status? There is a marital status field right there. Okay, so let's assume for purposes of our demo today that it's all fine. You've done your due diligence, you've got your conflict search done, and you know that there is no conflict. The next step is moving into creating a file with the next proper steps. You can always come back here and regenerate these documents. Okay. Now, to create a file with a uLaw, you would click on this Matter button. It says Loading Contacts, and it creates a brand new file or a matter for you. Now, there's two pieces of information we ask for, just like how you had in your contacts. One is a simple title, so it's easy to resonate or have some relevance around what this matter is. This was a slip and fall, so you could say Larry was his. If you know the information about the neighbor or whoever the opposing party is, you can put that in. Okay. And you can also notify, and you can customize this list. This is a list that's personal to your legal firm, the different areas of practices that you want to focus on. And there's a reason why we're capturing it right when you create a matter, because we can now give you a revenue definition on where you're making most money. So there's a quick question. Can we add the marital status as part of the client? Absolutely, yes. If that's important for you to ask, yes, you can make that change. So I'm going to say this is a small claims matter. Okay, you have a huge list. This is personable. You can change it the way you like it. I'm going to say small claims and hit save. It saves the matter, so right at the center it says saving matter. And uLaw generates a file number for you automatically. You don't have to create it. It takes the first name's first alphabet, last name's first alphabet, and hashes today's date and time so that it's always unique. if by any chance you have your own numbering system, you can enter it in the matter description. So the first file in December of 2021. If there's a court file number, you can enter that as well. Your default fee rate of $400 plus your assistance rate gets automatically populated, but you can always overwrite it. So you could say, this is a friend referral, so I'm going to charge them $200, let's say. By default, we assume you're going to be charging taxes on top of the dockets, okay? But if you're not charging taxes, you can come into this matter and make that default tax rate 0. So that's very specific to this matter then, okay? All right, so as soon as you've saved that file, the first thing you start to see is the matter events. So in uLaw, you have events, which are really dockets. Because we call them events because some of them are billable, some of them are non-billable, some of them could be matter-related, some of them could be unrelated to a matter, but still an event, or a certain occurrence of an event pertaining to that matter. May not be necessarily a docket yet, okay? So we call it an event. Now coming into templates. Now all of your documents are under document generation, or you can have them under letters. You can see them under letters. But really, overall, it's available under document generation. And throughout the platform, you would see this little button called compliance. Not only is uLaw compliant with Law Society from a legal accounting perspective, so ledgers, journals, all the wonderful things that you don't want to hear about today, but it's also very much compliant, right, with all the non-accounting practice management guidelines and bylaws and rules and the documents that are being asked of during an audit, for example. So the compliance button pretty much has everything you need, even during the day of the audit, if you've done your due diligence of entering all the important information. Generating documents is just a click of a button. Okay. So you have retainer letters. You can do simple, elaborate, or a flat rate retainer. You can also generate them in Word, which is a cool feature because now you can edit it. So let's say I'm doing a flat rate. And it comes down to whether you want to charge your customer a retainer or not. So let's say you are asking for a retainer. I'm now opening a retainer letter. Oops. All right. So this is a simple letter. It has from the office of, date stamped, and one of the samples. There are many samples, but it pretty much populates all the relevant information. Okay. It's got the Larry versus Jack. So you could customize this the way you like. Very important as part of your communication, service and communication, to talk about the termination of legal service. So what is the responsibility that you have and you expect your customer to follow when it comes to termination? So it's a two-way street. You can terminate it if they don't pay you on time. They can terminate it within a certain time period. So the retainer letter almost becomes the guideline that defines the relationship that you have with this customer, the business relationship that you have with the customer, and hence it's very important that you think through how best you communicate everything that's important to you and your legal business in representing this client through this document and the obligations they have. So let me give you a few more examples. So again, document generation, letters. The first thing was under retainer letter. Now I'm going under letters. There's the same thing under here as well. This is kind of the mother lode of things. This is just little quick menu options. If I go under hourly, you have different templates. Another common one that I see is contingency retainer samples, where we have something even specific to a POA. Okay. Okay. Basic information. As you can see, this template is slightly different. So, very important for you, either you bring in your own template, which we allow you, you can always bring in your own template in, or just repurpose what we give you as a starting point. And you can just remove things that you don't need. It gives you a starting point, nevertheless. Okay? So, let us say you've got that $1,000, or you've sent this retainer agreement. I'm going to move forward assuming that you have done the next step, which is really signing the retainer agreement, and you've got your customer to sign off on the retainer agreement as well. Okay, so that's the next step. Now, comes the next level is using the practice management to record each and every transaction that has occurred in real life. So here is how you can go ahead and do that. So let's assume your customer has paid you a retainer. There are multiple ways in which you can accept it. As I said, you can have retainer letters that have a little link right at the bottom asking for payment, just like how we had for the client intake form. Or if this is the old school way and they're either coming in person or you're on the phone, you can accept it through check or credit card, however you like. So let's say you got a check. The first thing you do is come into Disbursements Retainer, click on New Retainer, and just tell us how much of money, when did you receive it. You can always backdate this, which means, did they pay you cash? You can know you can get up to $7,500 in cash. There's some rules around getting retainer cash, right? But let's say you've got a check. You do know that within 24 hours you have to deposit that cash retainer into your trust account. So you do have to show a bit of an audit trail, if you will, to the auditors once you receive cash retainers. Recommended to go ahead with any method that's traceable. So let's say you've got a check. Now this is a list of bank accounts that you've created placeholder for, really pertaining to some real life accounts that you may already have. Okay, so it's like you really have an account and you just put a name to it in uLaw to indicate which one you're putting it under. Now, if Larry paid for it, you can put his name, just leave it empty. Or if Larry's wife paid for it, you can put her name, because the retainer receipt then gets made in that particular name. Very important for you as part of that service communication, first step, to provide that retainer receipt. Okay? And it's, you can use different themes. You can say who within your business created this for you. You can make an additional sales receipt if they want, a duplicate receipt if they ask for, right? And then click download. So anytime you're generating a PDF document out of uLaw, you click the download button. So here is your retainer receipt, which is, again, Law Society compliant, has your customer's name, your information, the receipt number, the date, how was this paid, the check, the amount, right? You can have your digital signature on it. Multiple receipts, duplicates, and you email that to your customer. All right, so you've created the client, you've done all the due diligence around checking their conflict, you've gone ahead and created a matter, you've signed a retainer letter, you've received the $1,000 retainer into the trust account, and now it's, of course, your due diligence to deposit that check into the trust account. And it's best if you do it as soon as you receive it, because it makes it easier for you to reconcile the numbers at the end of the week or month. Okay, so that comes down to client intake, service communication. If by any chance you did not move forward with this, we have a letter for that as well. So you can come in here under letters, non-engagement as a sample. So clearly stating, and this is a template provided by Law Society as well. We pre-populate all the information. Clearly states this letter is further to our meeting on a specific date, yada, yada, yada. That, as indicated to you at the time, unless we receive the money of retainer, whatever, by this date, we would not commence. And to date, we have not received any funds, and according to that, we're not acting for you. This is a very critical document when you're not engaging your client. Okay? So that's right under document generation, non-engagement. Yet another sample. Okay, before I move into docket, I'm just going to pause real quick. I know I have another 15 minutes. I want to spend it to show you how you can docket, disperse, invoice, and then we should be, and then maybe do a quick court form. I should be able to cover that up. Do you have any questions at all so far in everything that anything that I've discussed? You can use the chat window quickly to indicate if you have any questions, and I'll continue to follow through with my demo. So once you've got the retainer and you're docketing, the matter events becomes critical. There's many ways in which you can docket in uLaw. We've evolved the product over, as I said, over a decade now. So if you've got initial client interview, you can use the description, say initial meeting with client, discussed the slip and fall situation. You can beautify this, you can bulletize it, you can do whatever you like with it. Now, the duration is important because it's the actual time that you spent on this docket, in doing this docket. So this could be maybe 30 minutes, but maybe you're billing them on an hourly basis, yeah? Regardless. So you can do billable time, one of the ways in which you can docket, and you click Save. When you do a billable time, uLaw takes the $200 as the rate, applies the jurisdictional tax. In Ontario, we've assumed it's an Ontario lawyer or a legal practitioner, so it's 13%. That comes from your settings. Okay, so it's taken the 2 plus the 13%, 226. We're saying if you were to invoice them, this is what you should expect as a refund, because you've already locked in $200 worth of work. If you're not charging tax, you can say edit default tax rate as 0. We recommend that you do it at the start of the matter, because then it can get a bit convoluted when you're doing halfway through. Then you can see the taxes are now removed. Okay? If you remove that and click Save, it defaults to 13% or whatever is the jurisdictional tax. Now, if I were to do an invoice right now, I can do interim bills, so I can do a pre-bill. I can choose many different themes. And this is what it would look like. Now, see, it's a pre-bill, so it's got this watermark. It does not have an invoice number. It's for your eyes only. This is just so that you're confident that if you were to send this out, this is going to look good. You're going to look professional. Okay, so $200 is the work put in so far plus the taxes. Here's the running bill of the $1,000 retainer that you received. And today, if I were to invoice this, that would be what's left in the trust. But let's say I want to do a couple of more dockets. I'll say add new event. And this could be document drafting. Now, if you see this billable time, it's clickable. So you can click on it. And this little arrow, you can indicate this now and toggle this to be also a flat rate docket. Once you toggle that, now you don't have to enter time. You can just say the actual dollars. Okay, so let's say there's some documents created. Now you're charging them a flat rate for it. It's not time and material. You can go ahead and do that. So uLaw will take the entire 400 plus the taxes, 452. So you can see almost the spread, 66% of your docket, the money comes from this flat rate docket. compared to the billable time. Okay. And again, you can do a pre-bill, invoice, preview, and it's an interim bill, so it shows you the 200, and you can see the difference between a billable type and a flat rate. The flat rate does not have the unit cost per hour or the time involved. You could do pro bono dockets. You can actually put a docket and make it 0, because if the entire matter in this case was a flat rate matter, if you remember, so you're not charging by the hour, you can even make this 0. You can say, I would have ideally charged billable time, but because this is a flat rate matter, I'm not charging you for it. And so let's say second meeting. Next steps. Now I can do a billable time 0, or I can even do a flat rate 0, and there's some differences in that, and I'll show you what it is. So till you've invoiced, uLaw loves you really to make changes easy peasy. Of course, even after you invoice, it's easier to make changes, but there are some adjustments to be made. Now you can only invoice dockets, only invoice disbursements, because there are certain types of matters in which disbursements become a big part of the initial billing, like accident benefits. You may have a lot of disbursements to begin with. Now you can see here the client interview. One style of telling a customer is, I would typically charge you $200, but because this is a flat rate, I'm not charging you. So that's one style of legal firm telling their customer how they're going over and above. Another way is not telling them anything. So saying, hey, I'm not charging you for this. Okay? So you can decide whether you want to do a billable time 0 or a flat rate 0. Now, disbursements, very critical. So you could go into disbursements, say add new disbursement. And we've done many webinars, and if you go into our YouTube channel under uLaw Practice, you would see there's a CPD session called Disbursements Demystified, where we talk about the importance of disbursements being paid from your trust account if you can. If you have the luxury of a retainer, we highly recommend that you pay disbursements out of your trust account because, again, I don't want to get into the accounting lingo, but it's not your money to begin with. It just saves you a lot of time, reduces really the amount of practice management steps you have to take. But nevertheless, we still see people pay out of general account. So I'm going to say withdrawing this disbursement cost from general. So you can say pay disbursements. Then we ask, what is the disbursement? Now, if you put in facts, not here, add new disbursement, actuals. Okay. Now you can see that the screen toggled and the rate became $1. And this is coming right from our settings where we spoke about the disbursement rates. Okay. So I could say lost stamp fee, whatever is the different photocopies. You can see now it's 50 cents. Tax exempt, or there are certain disbursements that are tax exempt. For example, you could have a court fee. That's $200. That's tax exempt. Now, the bottom part in uLaw, and this is the fun stuff, is you can tell uLaw right now, or your practice management system, how did you as the legal firm pay this court fee? The top part is you telling the customer, hey, there's a disbursement of $200 that will be taken away from your invoice. But the bottom part is you telling yourself, for your own bookkeeping, how did you pay for it? Did you pay this out of your own pocket? So did you use your own money? Or which bank account, general bank account did you use? And if you did use the TD Bank or RBC Bank, what was the means by which that payment was made? Okay? It could be a certified check. If so, what is the check number? It makes it really easy for you to reconcile once you have all these details already available. You can even print that check. Of course, the certified check you can't, but a check, you can certainly print that check as well. So this creates a PDF document, and all you need is your actual check leaflet to be left on your printer. So there's a question about the privacy. If you've been using uLaw, am I private with all my client information? Is the data compatible with Microsoft? Yeah, absolutely. So that's one wonderful aspect of it. So let's say this is to the Ministry of Finance. You can even print that PDF, right? You can, so you've got the actual check. You don't even have to write it, and the remittances at the bottom. So a quick answer to that is every screen in uLaw, like we don't hold you hostage. Our prices are pretty cheap, right? Reasonably cost effective, let's put it that way, politically correct. For first year entrepreneurs, it's $34 a month, after which it's $39 a year, times 12 if you went with the yearly package, or it's $49 a month. But there's just too much value in it, even for that cost. So we don't want to hold you hostage for the data. For our lifetime value typically is about 8 to 9 years. So if you like the product, and a big part of our exercise is to make you use the product and like it. Once you've mobilized that use of it, pretty much I find people using it. But if you needed to move away, the great example I use is if you win the lottery and you don't have to do this anymore, you can export all information from wherever you feel like. So Microsoft, absolutely. Excel, you can do that. You could export contact information. You can see every screen has an export button in it. Matters. Most importantly, accounts. You can see Excel, PDF, date range. So yes, there's no need to fear because we want you to earn the business and we want to keep you, but if you have to leave, it's really easy to do that. All right, so I've got a few dockets and I've got a couple of one disbursement, and you can see my project balance coming down. So let's say I'm going ahead and creating an invoice. Let's say complete. I'll skip the pre-bill. I'm going to dockets and disbursements are going to be part of that invoice, and I click download. I'm now ready to download that invoice that's just getting generated and being prepared. And this is the actual invoice that I can send the client. It's got the whole frozen winter theme. I don't like that, but that's what we got. You know, the same thing we spoke about. You can, if you don't like that invoice theme, you can always come back here. You can click on this little status, reprint this, a totally different theme. Okay, so let's see, I like the whole hot pink. Sometimes the customer may lose an invoice. They may ask you to reprint it. You can do that too. Okay, so it's got an invoice number, a date, balance left in trust, all the information. That's a running bill. You can reduce the amount of paper if you like. Simplify it to 2 pages. You can do that. We've got eco-friendly options as well. You can see here, eco-friendly, all that. Now, once you've invoiced, the next step is really to move the money in real life, of course, and also tell your practice management that you moved it. But I don't want to get into that because that becomes legal accounting. But you would actually move that money from called pending trust transfer from trust to general. So this is how you docket disperse. So court forms, I'll stop with that. So here's under matters, you have this concept called additional parties, yeah? So you could click add party. And here's where you would start to introduce different types of contacts into our relationships as parties into this matter. So let's first create that opposing party as a contact. So I could say add new contact under my defendants group, and I'll say this is Mr. Jack Longbottom. Okay. Put his information in. And click save. So that's a prerequisite that you, of course, have that information stored in our database to begin with. But once you have it one time, you can start to utilize that many times. For example, a representative of the opponent, you may come across that representative again and again in many different matters. So here's a list of representatives. There's about 22. And let's say that it is Chad Spell, who's the legal or let's say it's Brian Sharp. Yeah, he's legal counsel. He's got an address. Okay, let's use Brian Sharp. Yeah. Go ahead and post. So you answered the question in the chat. Okay, what is? Sorry. I think I answered the question about the data. Where could students find more information? Right under uLaw.io in our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/uLawpractice. Once you've logged in into uLaw, under Help, you have Tutorials, uLaw Answers, and at all times you have our support. So if you click on, there you go. Our staff are sending you that information. You can click on support@ulawpractice.com or just click email. They can ask any question they have pertaining to the uLaw at any time. All right, so I have another 2 more minutes. So I'm going to quickly show you. I'm recording this, so I'm going to say a defendant. So I'm choosing a type of party. I'm saying defendant, and it's Jack Longbottom. I click Save. So now I've associated Jack Longbottom, the contact, as a party type defendant in this matter. I'll add another party. There could be multiple defendants, but I'm just going to go with one for today. I'll say representative. There are many different party types. I'll say representative. The opponent is Mr. Brian Sharp, and I'll click Save. Now, if you go into court forms, and if you go to SCC, of course you can see we have landlord and tenant, POA, all the wonderful things here. You can choose whatever form that you like that's pertaining to SCC. If you're part of the Ottawa courthouse, we also pre-populate the address. We've got the court file number, right? I guess this guy was in Brampton. There you go. And you just have to click download. Now, uLaw knows, and we update our court forms as soon as it gets updated in real life in the real websites. We typically take a week to 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of change. And if it's a small claims, we know it's a Word document. If it's a landlord and tenant, we know it's a PDF. And what we do is we pre-populate as much as information. In this case, you can see there's a lot of information that's filled out. You've got the address. You've got the plaintiff's information. So Larry Gregory, their address. And this is just a starting point. You can always say, I've got, I'm adding an additional plaintiff document at a later time. I can add email address. I can change this information at any time. Okay, and I think I'm at the top of the hour. So court forms is, again, something that we do really well. So when in doubt, click on document generation to generate all the different types of templates that you need from a matter perspective, documents relating, right from retainer letter to court forms. And I'll conclude today's session right here. And I'll open up the lines for any questions. Awesome. Yeah, you're now unmuted. You can definitely speak up.
Well, thank you so much. Does any